Welcome to Leadership is Dead, the podcast that challenges traditional leadership thinking and explores what it really means to lead in a post-COVID world. Each week, we dive into fresh insights and strategies brought to you by leadership expert Dr. Neil McIntyre. Each week, our hosts Liam Williams and Ava Brown take you through thought-provoking discussions based on Dr. McIntyre's latest writings and ideas, which are designed to help you rethink what leadership can be. But before Liam and Ava dive in, let's hear directly from Dr. McIntyre himself as he shares a few words on today's topic. Get ready, because he's here to set the stage for what's coming up.
Organizational leaders have to make a lot of important decisions regarding their company and their business. And a lot of times these decisions will have a tremendous impact on not just the day-to-day operations of the organization, but also the long-term success or even failure of the company itself. But there's probably no decision that I think is more critical for organizational leaders than the decision of when to hire somebody. You know, for organizations, when they have somebody that somehow leaves for whatever reason, or through the process of expansion, there's new positions that are created, you know, it's a time for excitement for the organization itself. It's also, if somebody's leaving, it's a time for a little bit of sadness, a little bit of mourning, because you've had a team member who has proven themselves and now they're leaving and now you're having to replace them. But it's also kind of outlined in optimism too, because there's excitement over the opportunity that this presents for somebody else to join your team and how they're going to impact the overall performance of the company. But you know, a lot of times when we have interviews and we have to go through and make hiring decisions, a lot of organizations really center that hiring decision on one thing. And it's not saying that they don't look at other aspects, though. I mean, when you have a position that's open in your organization, you're looking for somebody who meets specific criteria. If they have that criteria, they have that degree, they have that experience, all of that is great. You know, they check all the boxes. They're basically qualified to do the job that you're looking for the next hire to do. You know, with that, it comes some negative aspects too. I mean, you may have somebody that has the experience and the qualifications, but they have some negative habits that they have basically been able to foster over their years of doing similar work. And you may not necessarily want those negative traits to be all of a sudden come into your organization. So you may opt for somebody who is less qualified in that. But the hiring decision doesn't really hinge on just that, though. I think in my experience with dealing with organizations and assisting with the whole interview and hiring process, what I have seen time in and time out is that a lot of organizational leaders determine their hiring decision on whether the applicant fits into their company culture. They're looking for somebody who's going to be able to come in that's not going to cause any ripples or any waves in the company culture. Everything is going to basically transition very smoothly. The person's personality will get along with the other personalities who are already on the job. And, you know, it's important that when you bring somebody into your company, that they do fit in. I'm not saying that that is a bad thing, but that should not be as significant of a deciding factor as we make it. Instead, we should look at other things. But too often we look at that concept of whether they're going to fit in or how will they fit in. Will they rub other people the wrong way? And it may even be the situation where the leader themselves may feel challenged by that person's personality, and they may perceive that that individual, if they were to hire them, may not actually fit in with the personality of the leader themselves. So what that leads to a lot of times is for organizational leaders to really kind of sort of hire people that have similar traits, similar personalities. And also it may lead them to hire individuals who reflect the same values and the same mindset as the leader themselves. There's some strengths to that, but there's also some obvious weaknesses that we'll get into in a moment. Instead, what I would argue that in our time today, that what's more important for individuals going through the hiring process is to hire individuals based on their potential. And when I say their potential, what I'm talking more specifically about is us going from culture fit to this perspective of culture add, which here again is based on the potential individual that we hire, on their potential for our organization, and also for their individual growth. Now, what's the difference between culture fit versus culture add? Culture fit is oftentimes going to lead us to generally hire people that have the same mindset, the same personality, the same value system. They're going to be individuals that kind of sort of piece together like a puzzle, but there's nothing that really differentiates them from each other, and they're able to get along with those. So what happens when we hire somebody like that? I mean, you may be listening to this and thinking, well, that's exactly the person I want to hire. Well, what happens when you do that, you really create a very homogeneous organization where everybody is basically the same. And what you're telling people when you focus on culture fit, you're telling your team members that the most important aspect of your company is that people get along, that people conform to the expectations of the company itself, and that with that, there's no expectation of conflict. There's no expectation of challenging ideas or even coming up with innovative ideas. That what you value by focusing on culture fit is you're valuing consistency and conformity. Culture add, on the other hand, as I mentioned a few moments ago, really looks at potential. But culture add, what you're doing with it, you're looking at your organization, you're taking a step back, and you're taking a very objective viewpoint and assessment of your organization and who you have that's part of your organization right now. But also you're looking at where is your organization currently, but also where do you want your organization to go in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And do you have the potential and the talent and the resources in your organization to propel you to that at this moment? And when you come up with your weaknesses or the areas that you're a little deficient in, then what you're trying to do in the hiring process is you're trying to find somebody to fill that gap. It's not really trying to find somebody who can fit in, but you're trying to find somebody who has a skill set that it differentiates them from the others in your organization, and that by adding them to your team, it's going to spur innovation and creativity and even challenging the status quo somewhat. A lot of times as far as company leaders, we don't want that. We kind of avoid that because we like things being the way it is. We are creatures who, go against change. We don't like change. But as an organization, if you're ever really going to truly grow and become innovative, you've got to challenge your company culture, and you've got to challenge the way of doing things. And whenever you focus on culture add, you're basically allowing fertile ground for that to happen. You're having individuals come into your organization who are now asking questions of why have we as an organization been doing this for so many years? Why is this important for the organization? How has this worked? and what's been the impact of this. And it may even lead them to come up with ideas of their own that may further that organization down the path to a situation where they thrive and they're tremendously relevant in the future. In our economy today, in our world today, I think it is tremendously important, critical even, for organizations and their leaders to accept this mindset of culture add when they're adding team members to their organization, when they're going through the interview process, to be effective in the future and to be relevant in the future. We've got to move past the culture fit, and we've got to accept and develop and foster this growth mindset where we're focused on culture add. It's that which will make our organization tremendously more successful and more relevant and more impactful in the future.
Wow, I'm still trying to process everything Dr. McIntyre said.
Yeah, that talk on hiring practices was really something.
It really made me think differently about how we build teams.
Especially the part about culture fit.
Sometimes I think we get so focused on finding people who fit in.
Right, like they need to fit in perfectly.
But we forget to ask, what are they bringing to the table?
Exactly.
Dr. McIntyre really got me thinking about that.
I think we are looking for those puzzle pieces.
To fit in the existing puzzle.
Yeah, but then Dr. McIntyre was like, watch out. Because you end up with this organization where everyone's the same.
Homogenous.
Yeah, and that can really limit a company.
Again, like stifle innovation and all that.
And stop them from adapting.
To like the changing times.
Exactly.
So then Dr. McIntyre said, okay, try this instead.
Culture add.
Culture add.
Okay.
And that is all about finding an organization's weaknesses.
Oh, interesting.
And then finding people to fill those gaps.
Instead of just perpetuating what's already there.
And so Dr. McIntyre suggested a couple of things.
Like being honest with yourself about where you are as an organization.
And where you want to go.
Right. And then finding the people who can bridge that gap.
The gap between where you are and where you want to be. So they gave a great example. It was a tech company. And they were trying to reach a younger audience.
But they were having trouble doing that.
And so they brought in this new person.
Someone with a background in marketing to young people.
Yeah, and at first, it seemed like a weird fit.
Totally.
But this new person just started asking questions.
Questions that no one else had even thought of.
Yeah, and it led to a whole new marketing strategy.
And it was so successful.
That is amazing.
It's like bringing in a new color to a painting.
Oh, I like that.
Totally changes the whole thing.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, there is that saying, if everyone's thinking alike,
then somebody isn't thinking.
Exactly.
Love that saying.
It's like so true, though. It is all about diversity of thought. That's how you solve problems.
And come up with new ideas.
It's not just about filling a position.
Right.
It's about finding people who can add something new.
Exactly.
So really, culture add is about creating an environment where growth and innovation are the priority.
And not just maintaining things as they are.
Right. So Dr. McIntyre made this really powerful point.
About?
They said that culture add can help companies stay relevant.
In our changing world.
Wow, yeah. So much to consider here.
It really makes you think.
It makes you wonder how many great people
are being overlooked.
Because they don't fit the traditional mold.
Exactly.
Like, are we missing out on awesome people?
Just because they don't think like everyone else.
It makes me think about my own hiring decisions.
Me too.
Like, have I prioritized fit over add?
That's why I think it's so important to talk about this.
It really challenges our assumptions.
And maybe makes us consider new approaches.
Yeah, this has been such a thought-provoking conversation. I am excited to dive deeper into this.
Let's do it. Okay, so we have been talking about this shift.
From culture fit to culture add.
But what does that really look like?
Like in a company.
Yeah, how do you actually do it?
It's one thing to talk about it.
But how do you actually put it into practice?
But a lot of times, those are two different things.
Well, Dr. McIntyre had some thoughts on that.
Oh, good.
They talked about being intentional.
In the hiring process.
Right, like it's not just about changing how you think about it.
It's also about changing what you do.
Exactly.
So what did they suggest?
Well, first you got to define your values.
The company's values.
Yeah, like what are the values and behaviors that you want?
The values that are important to success.
Exactly.
That makes sense. I mean, you can't hire people if you don't know what you're looking for.
It's like a compass.
points you in the right direction.
Right, and then you got to look at your team.
Our current team.
Yeah, and figure out where the gaps are.
Like gaps in skills and perspectives.
Exactly.
So basically, be honest about where we need to improve.
And don't be scared to bring in people who are different.
People who might challenge things a bit.
A little bit of friction can be a good thing.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Like when you have people with all sorts of different backgrounds.
And experiences.
Then you get all these new ideas.
Innovation just explodes.
Exactly. Okay, and then Dr. McIntyre also talked about job descriptions.
Oh, yeah, how to write them.
Yeah, instead of just listing skills.
You should talk about the impact you want them to make.
Right. Attract people who are excited about the work.
And who want to contribute to the mission.
People who want to make a difference.
Not just fill a position.
Okay, so now you have all these great candidates.
How do we decide who to hire?
Dr. McIntyre said to focus on behavioral questions.
So not like, tell me about your experience with...
Right, more like, tell me about a time when you
faced a challenge or something.
Exactly. You'll learn more that way.
Than just looking at their resume.
You can see if their values align with your company.
And if they are the kind of person who likes to shake things up.
Right, because remember, culture ad isn't about finding clones.
It's about finding people who are different.
But who share the same core values.
People who can work together.
And achieve amazing things.
So it's more than just a hiring strategy.
It's really a whole philosophy.
One that can change the entire company.
It's about creating a culture where everyone can contribute.
Everyone feels valued.
And where everyone is excited to come to work.
Now, we've been talking about this for a while.
What do you think?
I'm curious about our listeners.
Have they seen this in their own workplaces?
Like, have they ever worked with someone who didn't seem like a good fit at first?
But then they ended up being amazing.
Or maybe the opposite.
A team where everyone thought the same way.
And it was really hard to get new ideas going. I think it's really helpful to think about our own experiences.
It helps us understand what culture ad really means.
And how we can make our workplaces better.
When you have a team where everyone feels like they can contribute.
It's pretty amazing what they can accomplish.
Yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
I like that.
Each person brings their own unique perspective.
And the team benefits from that.
That's what Dr. McIntyre was talking about.
Yeah.
They said that culture ad is important for businesses to stay relevant.
In this fast-paced world,
things are constantly changing.
If companies don't change too,
they'll be left behind.
That's a good point.
We need to embrace change.
And see it as a positive thing.
An opportunity for growth.
And innovation.
It's not just about demographics either.
Diversity.
Yeah, it's also about diversity of thought.
And experience.
Different perspectives.
When you have a workplace where everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas.
That's when the magic happens.
I'm feeling really inspired by this conversation. Dr. McIntyre has given us a lot to think about.
A roadmap for building better teams.
And it's not just for CEOs or managers.
Anyone can apply these principles.
Whether you're leading a team or just a member of one.
We can all make a difference.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into culture ad.
I hope you've learned something.
And that you're feeling inspired to make a change.
We need to be intentional about the cultures we create.
And build workplaces where everyone feels valued.
And respected.
And empowered to contribute.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive.
Until then, keep thinking about culture ad.
And how you can apply it in your own life.
That's all for this week on Leadership is Dead. A big thank you to our hosts, Liam Williams and Ava Brown, for their insightful discussion and analysis. And of course, a special thanks to Dr. Neil McIntyre, whose writings and thought leadership have provided the foundation for this podcast. If you're looking for more information on leadership strategies for a post-COVID world, be sure to visit Dr. McIntyre's website at neilmcintyreconsulting.com. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn by searching for Dr. Neil McIntyre. Remember, leadership is evolving, and it's time to embrace new approaches. Subscribe to Leadership is Dead wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next week for another enlightening discussion. Until then, lead with purpose.